So are we going to kind of gloss over Texas? Because you almost won in Texas.
I know. Hey, Landon, we're back.
We are finally back.
We took a week off. We're sorry about that. Welcome back to the Money Lap Podcast. I'm Parker Kligerman, joined as always by Landon Cassill. This is our podcast about all things motorsports. Of course, check out the Money Lap newsletter, which is in your inbox 3 times a week with some of the best highlights in motorsports and then all the cool stuff happening out there. And that's still been going. We didn't take a week off on that, but we did have a week off last week, Landon. Mostly because we just suck at aligning schedule-wise, I think.
Yeah, we kind of missed that. We should have recorded on Monday instead of we tried to record on Wednesday. I was not available on Tuesday. But long story short, things happened that we should have talked about last week, and then even more things happened that we're going to talk about this week. So are we going to kind of gloss over Texas? Because you almost won in Texas.
I know. We're definitely going to go to that. We'll go to a little bit of that, and we're going to spin it forward. I've had an interesting 2 weeks. Also, I was moving last week down at my Charlotte place. So that was a disaster. I was highly ambitious to think I was going to move and then do a podcast that afternoon.
Somehow I knew that wasn't going to happen.
There was no chance. Totally ran out of energy. It has been a busy week off for our whole crew. So as you mentioned, I almost won Texas. I also was right there in the conversation for the win at Talladega in the trucks this past weekend. And we'll dive into all that. I want to go into it. Our producer Josh last week also got engaged. That was a bit of a hindrance to us doing our podcast. So thanks, Josh.
Way to go, Josh. Congrats, bro.
Yeah, congrats, buddy.
I loved getting a random FaceTime from Josh. Usually when that happens, I know it's going to be something good. So that was exciting. Congrats, Josh.
Yeah, he was trying to FaceTime me. I was driving, and I was like, what's happening? And then I realized he was probably drunk, too.
What? Josh doesn't drink.
I'm kidding.
He's a
man. I do want to jump into some of our reviews, the PR lap. This is where we talk about ourselves and how much people love us. We have a week off from this, so we need to remind all the listeners out there how much they love us. But before we do that, I just want to say on this episode, we will talk my finish at Texas, the Talladega finish, the NASCAR Cup Series, what happened there. We're going to talk about confidence for race car drivers is a big topic and always a big topic around the motorsports world, and I think fans have a lot of questions about. We're going to talk trucks and, of course, fighting. We've got opinions there. And last but not least, and probably the biggest news of the week, that is that the FIA has formally approved the Andretti bid for a Formula One team. So we'll jump into that as well, which will be fun. But let's start with these reviews out there. We have NWolf24 who said, "This has become a weekly listen. Great work, fellas." He basically says he loves you, Landon. He loves the recaps of our races, and he's a fan of the newsletter. He or she. Sorry.
Cool.
Should say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Love
NWolf. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. We got Heath64. Great perspective, 5 stars. A great perspective on all things motorsports. Enjoy hearing from you guys who are not currently in, quote, top-tier equipment. I would refute that a little bit. Thank you. Just a different side of the house. Keep up the great work.
Maybe your equipment is highly tiered, Parker.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Top tier.
Review from Heath64. If there is a top tier and then a tippy top tier, maybe that's what it is.
Well, there's in the Xfinity series forever, there's top tier and then there's Joe Gibbs Racing. But that's and I don't want my team, who many of them listen to this, to think we're not top tier. We are top tier. Thank you guys. Appreciate the hard work and effort. So we'll just put that one aside. And then Jonathan Havey said, "I appreciate the guys taking their thought experiment well into its conclusion," when he was referencing when we discussed the charter situation in NASCAR. "I shuddered with Parker, too, when Landon said that NASCAR could put on the 500 regardless of team owner involvement." Oh, boy.
That is an interesting one. I love talking about that because I love taking that all the way. It's been a couple weeks, obviously, since we took the week off, but we talked about the charter business and what could potentially happen if the team owners don't come to an agreement and who really has the leverage. And my assessment on that is NASCAR has the leverage. I think they could still put a race on. I think they could if it came down to it, I think they could call Chase Elliott and get him to come to the track to drive a car that NASCAR provides rather than Hendrick Motorsports. I don't know. That's just my assessment. I think that the Daytona 500, the most important race in almost all of motorsports, will live on. Interesting story about the Daytona 500. Kind of story. This isn't too crazy, but it is a little interesting because it grinds my gears a little bit about our diecast business, right? And you guys know where this is going if you're listeners, but don't fast forward just yet. Okay, listen to this whole thing. So, you know that my frustration with our collectible industry in NASCAR is just these crazy lead times and minimum order quantities. If you're a real diecast collector, you know what I'm talking about. If you're a competitor, an industry member, you know what I'm talking about, because we've all had sponsors that wanted to get diecast made of our cars, but it takes a year to get them, and there's minimum order quantities, and it's just not a super straightforward and efficient process, and it's not really great for the consumer. Well, the Daytona 500 winning car, number 47, Ricky Stenhouse's car, was going to miss production this year, which it is crazy to me because it is such a huge race, and diecasts are such a huge collectible market. How on earth have we just whittled this down to the point that the Daytona 500 winning car is at threat of not even getting produced because there aren't enough orders for it? And so I'm not here to really get into the weeds on it, but it kills me that happens, and it's frustrating. But that didn't happen. It didn't. And that car is getting produced, and it is actually in stock and for sale right now. All thanks to Spoiler Diecast. And this is the ad read, okay? But don't fast forward to this part, because Spoiler Diecast saw this opportunity, and they made the investment and stepped up and made the minimum order quantity. And thanks to them, now the diecast community, the racing community, JTG, all of their sponsors, they have access to the diecast of that car, thanks to SpoilerDiecast.com for jumping in, saving the day, making the investment, taking the risk. And, it allows them to probably own the majority of that inventory that's on the market now. So if you want that car, you need to go to SpoilerDiecast.com. It's probably a pretty rare car and a special car because it's Daytona 500 champion. So if you want that car, go to where one of the largest inventories of diecast products in the industry is. Beyond just the Daytona 500 winning car of Ricky Stenhouse, you'll find what you're looking for. And if you spend $20 or more, you will get free shipping at SpoilerDiecast.com. That's not all. I think you'll still get a signed Landon Cassill 64 scale diecast if you spend $50 or more. We need to check with them on that to see if those are endless. Because I only signed so many of them. So I need to check and see how many they have left. But don't forget, Spoiler Diecast also has a pre-order system in place for the diecast for those minimum order quantities or those cars that are, I don't even know what I'm talking about at this point. They have a pre-order system. So if there's cars that are coming out, you want to let them know that you want to order it. $0 down. Why wait? Visit SpoilerDiecast.com today. Choose promo code MONEYLAP for free shipping, 5% off all orders. We love them. We love that they're not just some middleman in the industry. They're actually making moves here and trying to grow this collectible business for our industry, which we love and appreciate. Getting cars on the market that they know. Maybe at the time that the car comes out, the market didn't realize that they would want a Ricky Stenhouse Daytona 500 winning car, but Spoiler Diecast saw it, said, we'll put up the money, let's get these things made, and we'll sell them. And I appreciate them for that.
It's a real success story. You can go, as you mentioned, it's just gotten in stock last week if you want to go and get one of those. And I think that would be a cool collectible to have because, one, it's a single car, small team. It went out there and beat the biggest race. And for a driver who's been a bit of a journeyman now, although you and I hate that term, and has, found himself having to make, had tough decisions in his career to end up at that race team and to do something as big as win the Daytona 500 is a pretty big moment in this sport. And thank you to Spoiler Diecast for identifying that opportunity. It was really the genesis of starting that company. So And now they've, stuck to that and are going to continue to make those investments to support this industry. So go support Spoiler Diecast, spoilerdiecast.com. Check it out. Let's jump into, as I promised, Landon, and you alluded to, let's talk 2 weeks ago, Texas Xfinity, the finish, the last 10 laps. We're on newer tires than the 7 and the 21 ahead of me. We restart on the bottom, 5th. I basically move Cole Custer out of the way. He moves up the 20. I get to 3rd. I pass the 21 down in turns 1 and 2 with my newer tires. Flew by him. I get to the 7 down into 1 and 2 again. I go to the bottom this time like I did on the 21, but not really with the intention of passing the 7 because I just wasn't close enough to him, but with the intention of thinking, all right, I'll be as close to him as I can off there. I'll set up for the pass off turn 4, side draft him into 1. I'll make the pass there. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for me, this is not how it went down. I ended up beside the 7 off of turn 2 because I had such a run on the bottom. If you watch, I get very loose because I'm not expecting to be beside him and to have to pinch off the corner. At this point, I look at my mirror. I see the 20 has cleared himself. We once again mentioned the speed of Joe Gibbs' cars often. Especially if you can beat a Joe Gibbs' car, you got to take every opportunity. Therefore, I felt like at this position, I had to make the pass on the 7 down to turn 3. I drive as deep as I can in there. He squeezes me. I lose the right rear. We go up the racetrack. We don't touch, but this allows the 20 to catch us. He makes the pass on me into turn 1, and we finish 2nd. So it was, I did videos on it. I talked about it afterwards. I mentioned the word choke. I didn't really mean the choking in terms of the pass and the 3. That wasn't what it was. I think what I would like fans to understand, and you'd be great to break this down, is that not even just racing, in life, you're given a few opportunities where you really control the timing of something, but you have an advantage, right? And for me, it was a tire advantage, a track position advantage. I could have controlled the timing of that pass to the 7 better, which would have been coming off right behind him off of turn 2, getting to where I could side draft him off of turn 4, make the pass into turn 1. That's the best scenario possible. Or even make the pass off of 4 if I get a big run, he just gets tight or something, right? But because I mistimed it, I threw away my advantage of having the timing, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where I say the term choked, whatever. And that's really when I break it down. I don't know if you saw anything different.
Yeah, I have opinions. But before I dive into it with you, real quick, if you could do it all over again, crossing the start-finish line, you're catching the 7 car, what do you do? Going in turn.
Do it all over again. I would just, I would still go to the bottom. I would do that same thing. I would just really pay attention to where he was off of turn 2. And maybe that even means maybe going a little higher in turns 1 and 2 and sort of following him. And, that sense of that idea of just relating my time, timing this pass. So therefore I went into turns 1 and 2 as hard as I did against the 21 where I made the pass on him, but I didn't need to do that with the 7 because all I was trying to do is set up for the next lap into 1.
So here's what's tough about this. I know that you were not, you didn't intend on getting next to him off of turn 2. So, that kind of would require the do-over again or the review of it to go even farther back before that. But one thing to kind of clarify about Texas Motor Speedway in general, answer me this question, Parker. Mm-hmm. In road course racing, what are the corners that are best for passing? What are the passing zone corners? What makes a good passing corner on a road course?
Braking zone, slowest corners.
Longest braking zone?
Yep.
So that means the biggest difference between your top speed and your minimum speed.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So one thing that's unique about Texas Motor Speedway, and I'm going to add another feature to that, what makes good passing. Texas Motor Speedway have 2 ends of the racetrack, right? Turn 1 and 2 and turn 3 and 4. What do you think your delta between top speed and min speed is in turn 1 and 2?
I know what it is. It's 40 miles an hour. Basically.
All right. And what is your delta between top speed and min speed in turn 3 and 4?
I know what this answer is. It's about, in qualifying, it's about 10. In race trim, it's about 15 miles per hour.
Okay. How wide is the track, the track surface that you race on for the first half of the corner from bottom groove to the highest that you'll run in turn 1 and 2? What kind of
About
distance?
80 feet.
In 1 and 2.
Yep.
And how wide is that in 3 and 4?
Not 80 feet.
Probably half that, it almost feels like.
Definitely have.
So not only, if you look at it, if you even take road course racing principles, right, where we learn road course racing as a race car driver is where you learn the fundamentals of passing corners, not passing corners, right? Passing zones, non-passing zones. If you apply those fundamentals to Texas Motor Speedway, you realize that turn 1 and 2 is your passing zone at Texas Motor Speedway, not 3 and 4.
Yep.
Right? 3 and 4 is a high speed, high momentum corner. It's narrow, so it's kind of hard to get side by side with somebody. It can be a good passing zone. I'm not saying you can't pass someone there, but turn 1 and 2 is a corner where you have a long braking zone compared to 3 and 4, right? 40 miles an hour. It's also extremely wide. So when you have a driver like Allgaier who was running the high side in 1 and 2, and you were good on the bottom with new tires, you have this huge distance advantage to take a shortcut, basically, right? And if you're side by side with someone going down the front stretch, even if you don't have a tire advantage on them or you're equal in all things, if you're on the inside of someone going into turn 1 at Texas, you have a huge distance advantage to shortcut the corner and just clear them just based on distance, right? Now they might pass you back or they could cross you over. But you can at least get ahead of them, which in your case with Justin, that's all you needed to do, right? You just needed to get ahead of him.
Yep.
But in 3 and 4, not only do you not have a braking zone to sort of attack, right, and maybe overdrive the entry or make up time on entry to get ahead of somebody, you also don't have a distance advantage. You can't shortcut the entry to turn 3 because the entry to turn 3 is already pretty shallow, right?
Yep.
So, in my opinion, and this is tough, but it's easy to armchair quarterback it, but that's the fun part about making a podcast 2 weeks after the race is that's what we can do. So we're going to do it. To armchair quarterback this thing, it's almost like not only, because I believe that you knew going into turn 1 that you were like, I don't want to pass him going into turn 1. I'm not close enough. I can't clear him. So therefore I need to make sure that I come off of turn 2 right behind him.
Yep.
Right? And then I'm going to go into turn 3 right on his spoiler. Maybe I'll get him loose. Maybe I can get underneath him in the middle of turn 3 and 4. But the goal is to be next to him down the front stretch the next lap. Right?
Correct.
So that you can take your distance into turn 1, clear him into turn 1 the next lap. So if I could armchair quarterback it to make sure that you don't end up where you ended up next to him off of turn 2, I almost feel like you should have run his line in 1 and 2.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, and I thought about that. The only reason I would say...
Or at least, a car length below him, right? So you still have some
that's
clean
what
air.
I should have done. Just had
car
him
length below him, take a little bit longer distance like what he's running, and then you can also control where you're at compared to him. So, if you run his line... your worst case scenario is you run his line, you drive right up to his bumper, you just get him loose, and maybe you do pass him off at turn 2.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
But actually, it's like if you would have just followed him into turn 1 and 2, ran his line, and then you could have pushed him down the backstretch, then you could have accomplished that.
You're 100% right. 100%.
But without fully, that's my armchair quarterback suggestion, but I do want to, I think the more important thing for driver analysis, and I feel like we get reviews all the time. People love hearing us talk about this stuff. And it's stuff that I love talking about. I think that's the thing that is important to point out about Texas Motor Speedway is there is a passing zone at Texas Motor Speedway. It is turn 1 and 2. It's not 3 and 4. You can pass in 3 and 4. There's plenty of ways to do it. But the passing zone at Texas is turn 1 and 2.
Yes. And that is why, as we talked about, my intention was to, once I realized I was not going to clear him in 1 and 2, I wasn't close enough entering 1, the idea was, okay, let's just be as close as we can to be off of 2 so that we set up the 3 and 4 to be in this massive advantage down in turns 1 and 2.
Right.
I think where I got caught off guard in terms of where I caught him and I suddenly was beside him is I was so focused on being low and kind of what I did with the 21 to make up that time, even though I didn't need to be because I had such a tire advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was so focused on it that when you're that low and you talk about the distance between where, the amount of racing surface there is down turns 1 and 2 and the awkward angles, I couldn't see him. Like, when I'm all the way down the bottom, I couldn't see him all the way up there. There's no way I can reference off him. So, like, to your point, you go more his line or lane lower where you can see him, reference off him, put yourself in that position. Yes, that's 100% what I should have done. And,
that
the
other thing, too,
is a fail on my end.
Maybe I could see one of the reasons that I would have done what you did, run low in the bottom 1 and 2, is maybe to still protect myself against whoever's behind me, right?
Yep.
Because you don't know what tire differences. Like, you came off of turn 4 and you might have looked in your mirror and seen you had plenty of gap, but you just never know. 2 laps to go, that stuff comes out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, you might say, well, I'm not going to take a chance of just letting somebody underneath me into turn 1, so I'm going to run the bottom. And I could support that. I understand that. But I will say that you could, if you ran that middle line, you being on new tires, you have the freshest tires at anybody anyways. You can still protect. If somebody dives down to the bottom, you're on the outside line, you've got good tires, you could protect and just crowd that person if somebody appears there.
Well, it would have been the 20. Yeah, who would have appeared there would have been the 20. He was on new tires as well. So I think you have to factor that a little bit, which is probably, I hadn't thought about that too much because I think he got a big
he was
run
pretty
off
far
too.
back.
But yeah, he was far enough back. The only thing I will say to your point where it comes out of nowhere is Texas. Man, I had one point in that race where the 16 had to be 5 car lengths behind me. I was running the higher lane into 1, but we ran into some traffic at the same time, and so I tried to cut lower, and he and I about hit each other, and he gained. I didn't brake early. I didn't slow up early, but he gained 5 car lengths to my bumper and got me out of the groove and made the bottom of the racetrack and made the corner. And to that point, to your saying, like when you're on, and that was earlier in a run, maybe it wasn't a lap, but it was like early on a restart when we were trying to go around someone else at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could have been something John Hunter could have pulled off as well. Just because of the way the distance, you mentioned the distance difference between running 2 grooves up versus the bottom groove is just wild there. Wild.
Right. Well, yeah, I like setting up for that exit off of 2. I feel like I wish there's all scenarios point to me wishing that you would run the middle or outside. Because the other thing too is it just gives you momentum down the backstretch. So now you can push them down the backstretch as opposed to even if you would have ran the bottom and crossed up and timed it just right, you wouldn't have had momentum on them on the 7. Right?
Nope,
he would have been pulling away from you. Yep. So then you would have had to been playing catch up through turn 3 and 4. Now you were fast enough and you had fresh enough tires. I think that you would have caught him through 3 and 4, had a run off of 4, and passed him down the front stretch. But I like if you would have just followed him, ran his line, you would have had momentum down the backstretch. You could have controlled your pace there. But enough beating you up about that. I think I just wanted to make this point for the listeners, regardless of the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. That's a dynamic about Texas Motor Speedway that even though we give that track a hard time as far as intermediate tracks are concerned, that's an interesting dynamic that track has. It has a passing zone. That is a little bit unique for intermediates. We will get into more things that Parker should have done later when we talk about Talladega.
Well, we're going to jump into it now. Let's just do it now.
Oh, let's do it now then.
Yeah. So let's move to the next one of Parker's 2 weeks of being
These are great conversations to have too, by the way. Because you're going to get these wins, and it's going to be great.
I know it's going to be such a more fun conversation for me when it's like, oh, how'd it go? Oh, I won. Thanks.
Yep.
So we established what we could have done there. Is what it is, but we head off in the Roval in the Xfinity series, and we'll talk about the Roval later. 1 point below the cut line. Feeling very confident there. That next week, a lot of people took the week off. I didn't. Went and raced trucks. And let me tell you, Landon, there is a big difference in having a truck that qualifies 13th versus the last couple of years of having a truck that qualifies around 30th, 32nd. And let me tell you what it is. Quite simply, it's like being on easy mode suddenly
when you're that fast.
When you're that fast compared to being 1.5 seconds slow.
What was different?
For context, so the last couple of years, after so we won in 2017 with the 75 team at Talladega. 2018, we got one of the worst wrecks of my whole life at Talladega, lost that truck. We didn't race superspeedways in 2019 or 20. We did try to do 2020. We tried to do Daytona in 2020. We missed the race because we bought this truck. Or it was 2021, I can't remember. But we bought a truck that was older, and it just turned out to be a dog. And then we so we missed a race at Daytona with it. We then finished, I can't remember at Talladega, we did okay, maybe top 10 or something. Then we went to the next Daytona next year. We finished 5th or 4th, was in contention to win. I pushed out the Zane to win. Was that last year? That was last year.
Yep.
And so then we finished 9th with it, Talladega. But if you look at the average qualifying, the thing barely made the race at Daytona both years. I think 31st. I think our best qualifying with it was Talladega. That we finished 9th, maybe 24th or 26th. But it just felt like, I always prided myself on being someone that could take a broomstick and run at the front of a truck race at a superspeedway. And I could. It just took an immense amount of effort, and it took a lot of things having to go my way and huge risk. And I watched other trucks, and I'd see like, man, I can't do that. I can't do what they're trying to do. And so, long story short, my team owner at Henderson Motorsports, Charlie Henderson and Don Henderson, the family that owned Food Country USA, decided, let's go get a new truck. And we had an opportunity to get one. It was an older KBM truck, and they were KBM's very gracious in helping us put it together and that sort of thing. And man, we went out and qualified 13th. You would have thought we sat on the pole. We were about 6 or 7 tenths of the pole, but it was like a whole new world. I was like, man, this is going to be great. I didn't know how great, though, because we got into the draft, and literally in the first 5 laps, you have that moment where you can, like, suck up to anyone, and I was like, oh, baby, it's on. Drove right to the front, controlled a lot of the front at the stage 1, just lost my help at the end of the stage, and then we won stage 2, and, felt like in stage 3, we had a loose wheel that I had to go to the back and then pit and had to try and make my way through, and I was able to make my way through to the front twice. But it was just like, man, this is so much different. So we ended up getting in position the last restart to win, push the 34 down the backstretch. I didn't realize at this time that the 11. So let me back up one sec. We get the white flag. I'm on the top side, leading the top lane, about 4 rows back from the leader. The 11 is pushing me. He had agreed to push me. Funny how those things come around. Corey Hyman and I had an interesting run-in early this year, but we seem to be on better terms now. And he's pushing me, but he fell off my bumper, so I start nailing the brake, trying to back up to him to get the run down the backstretch, or at least to set up that he's on my bumper to connect the energy. While I'm doing this, the 34, which is 4th on the bottom, makes this amazing move. Brett Moffitt shoots to the top in front of me. He then gets the momentum of me having then finally connected the 11. I have to push him. I push him. The 19, who's the leader, shoots to the top to block our lane. The 34 dives to the middle. My spotter, Brandon McReynolds, calls an amazing move. He's like, middle, middle, middle. I jump to the middle. He goes, push the 34. He basically telling me to do it. I'm like, this is awesome. Push the 34. And at this time, I know we're going to take the lead. It's just, what do I do now? Well, in my mind, I don't remember looking in the mirror or really thinking that the 11 was still connected to us. I just didn't imagine he was because of how we were so connected to the 34. So I push him out past the leader. He yells, then he's clear. Now I'm clear. And it's a quick clear to the bottom in front of Chandler Smith on the bottom lane. And it's one of those moves, and you know this, especially trucks. Trucks have a huge blind spot on the left side. I've tried to work on it with different mirrors. There's no way to do it. You cannot see on the left side. So a lot of those moves to cover the inside are just guesses. This was in the definite guess category / I'm coming down, and if there's a truck below me, we're going to wreck. So I moved left. It was really tight from the 25. He attaches to my rear bumper and now starts just basically trying to spin me out through 3. I'm so sideways to the middle of 3. He pops to the outside. Well, when he popped, I felt like that was a signal that maybe the 11 had gathered, momentum on the top. Whenever he wants to cover the top, I'm not letting us get beat by the top. I moved to the top and super loose, and as I do that, I realize I've been played. He shoots to the bottom. That leaves us up top, and we end up finishing 9th. And I should have stayed behind him. Now, there was 2 decisions to make here, and I'll let you dive in here in a sec because I know you want to dissect these. Corey Hine talked to me after the race. He said, hey, man, if you just stuck with me on the top and pushed the 34 out, I was going to stick with you. We could at least go, battle this out at the line. I said, oh, I didn't realize you were there. Now, I said to him, I didn't realize that. That probably makes sense. I looked at it. I don't know if that entirely made a ton of sense to do that move. Mm-hmm. But the move I definitely shouldn't have made was, and I don't disagree with following the 34 to the bottom at all, actually. The move I didn't need to make was when the 25 had me all jacked up and sideways and everything, just stay on the bottom and push the 34. And you like to say the bottom always wins. If you have a chance to push him out, right, or back up to a truck behind you, get a run, and maybe try to shoot the outside, that's a possibility. But at that point, you kind of had to say, okay, I'm gonna finish top 3 in this, but if I can get a run materialized here, maybe I'll shoot the outside and try to win it, And my mistake was trying to do a run or block a top lane run. That 1 wasn't there, and 2, that's not really how it works at Talladega. At Talladega, you want to wait till the tri-oval to make that move. Mm-hmm. That was a Daytona move.
Yeah. I'm actually watching it right now.
You're live here on the Money Lab. We give us your breakdown live by.
I think the bottom always wins. It's kind of that simple. I don't know how many more times I have to tell you that at Talladega.
I know.
To me, I think you had close to the race-winning move or a chance at it going into turn 3, coming to the checkers when you cleared the 34 and you cleared the bottom lane. I think you could have either gotten to the 34's quarter panel there and he probably would have forced you to wreck him, or you just get to the bottom right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then see what kind of run can materialize between 3 and 4. I mean, it's a tough position to be in. I don't think there's any,
You're saying when I pushed the 34 off turn 2, I should have just shot fully to the bottom in front of the 25.
Yep, because he opened up
the 25 there?
What's that?
Was I clear the 25 there?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
See, that would have been the move. That would have been the move.
Yeah, let me do it off 2 here. So you and the 34 and the 11 have a run. Yeah, you're clear for you're clear into turn 3 for a quarter of a second.
And you basically beat the 34 to the bottom, you're saying.
Yep, beat the 34 to the bottom. But even if you don't beat the 34 to the bottom, you still hung the 11 out there by himself. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's coming back around, and even if he is, maybe it won't be until the middle of the tri-oval where you can catch that push then and try to win it from the top. But it's too far around to make that move off of turn 4. It just never seems to work.
It never works.
No, the bottom always wins.
Distance. It's the same thing as Texas. It's the
distance.
Yep.
Especially in the trucks. I mean, they're slower. They got more downforce.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the distance is such a benefit there. I'm not saying all that to say, dang it, Parker, you had it won. I don't think you had it won.
Not in Talladega.
It's still, it's still hard to say how you could have actually won the race. But
you know what? You are so right. There is down the backstretch. If I just popped to the bottom there, it would have been hard because the 30, I was pushing the 34 so hard. He would probably have shot down too, but you're so right. If I just choose the second I'm clear on the 25 to beat him down.
If you would have popped there right at the right time, you would have slid right in front of the 25, and so you got an instant push from him.
Yep.
You were on the 34's bumper, so just by changing lanes, I feel like you would have side drafted him. He may not. That's why it's if you would have made that move, it might have resulted in a wreck.
Yeah.
Because the 34 would have reacted pretty aggressively, tried to block, and you might have just turned him.
Yep. Well,
But
that'd be his fault.
even then, what's my other rule about super speedway racing? The guy who causes the wreck is never in there.
Yeah. Okay, well, then I have to admit something, by the way. I don't know if you saw earlier in the race. There was a certain stage 3 wreck.
Yep.
It may have precipitated for my front bumper slightly. Now I was worried.
Did you get wrecked?
No, absolutely not. There was like 6 trucks that wrecked about me. So just in my defense, hold on. So we have a loose wheel. I've backed out of the pack. I'm trying to figure out what to do here, and I'm not even paying attention on moving forward because I've had this loose wheel. Like, the thing feels like it's falling apart, and I'm basically trying to figure out how we get to the bottom, to the back of the pack, to the bottom, or ride this out to get a caution. Right. Well, at that same time off of turn 2, I'm on the top lane. They all check up really hard off of turn 2, which was very unusual. It's not a usual thing that happens. It happened a couple times in the race, but it's not a consistent theme at Talladega to have a turn 2 high lane checkup sort of thing. That's an odd the accordion effect. And that accordion effect happens in front of me. Well, the 41 who's ahead of me nails the truck in front of him, which stops him so hard because of the accordion. I just nail the 41. The 41, when that happens, is already connected to whoever's in front of them. I think maybe the 23 or so on, who spins to the left, hits the truck on the left. That hits a truck on the right. The wreck goes 3 rows forward, which is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. And at the same time, I'm like, oops. And then I'm about to get nailed, and essentially, like I'm about to get nailed from the outside. I just turn left through this hole and drive by, and I'm like, okay.
Yep.
Oh, well.
I would much rather be the guy that causes a wreck than anybody else at those super speedways. Example number 2 would be, who's the guy that finished 5th on Sunday?
Michael McDowell.
Corey LaJoie.
Oh, Corey LaJoie. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're right.
Corey, God bless him. Great job. Solid top 5. Also wrecked the entire field coming to the line.
To get the top
Came
5.
through. He came through just fine. And then maybe a good segue to our next conversation. Who finished 7th in the truck race? Nick Sanchez.
Oh, yeah. Let's go to... Before we go there, real quick, I just have to say, once again, I had a certain drink before my truck race that put me almost in winning position, and that is Four Sigmatic Think Coffee. Thank you very much. The instant coffee, once again, is the coffee that powered me to being so close to winning the last 2 weeks. This coffee is my favorite coffee. It is the coffee that I've said has made me smarter. And I truly believe that. And although some people out there have wondered what was the baseline starting, we'll say it's not very high. So it didn't have to do much work, but it did work. And I now religiously have it before races. And since I've been doing that, we've been in contention to win. I can't exactly say I have the trophy yet to prove this, but we've been close enough. So if you want to try this coffee, head to foursigmatic.com, FOUR, and that's SIGMATIC.com. Use the code MONEYLAP for 15% off. Check out the Think Coffee. I love it. It's awesome. And I've also just been given a brand new product they haven't even launched yet that they want me to test and try out, which I'm going to try this weekend before the Roval. So we will see if this is the game changer that gets me into victory lane finally. And if it is, then I expect you all out there to check out this coffee. So let's talk about some fights, should we?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, as is the case at Super Speedway Racing, always leads to fighting. This is a new one for me. So, in the truck race, I believe, I can't remember exactly with how many laps to go, but it was towards the end. Matt Crafton is in front of Nick Sanchez. Nick Sanchez had one of the fastest trucks in the field, qualifying up in the front row, and essentially Nick is trying to make his way back to the field after a penalty. He's riding behind Matt Crafton, who moves up the racetrack from the middle lane. Now there's 2 rows of trucks to sort of describe this. And at that time, and I believe I'm right ahead of them, and I think I remember Matt was like right behind me or something, and then suddenly they're like, he's not there and there's caution. But I wasn't really paying attention because Matt at that time was failing to push me really well. He just couldn't suck up and push me. His truck seemed really slow. So he and I were trying to work together, and it just wasn't working. And I'd actually lost a chance at the lead because of it. So I was more focused on what I was going to do for going forward. Well, he moves out. He then moves back down. When he comes back down, the 2 of Nick Sanchez is there. The 2 connect and spins the Matt Crafton out, who wrecks into a lot of the field. This causes a red flag. Matt is very angry about it. He waits, according to reports, for Nick Sanchez in the garage. Eventually, he sees Nick Sanchez while he's in his Matt is in his street clothes. He's had time to change, and confronts Nick, who said, and I quote, "I was sucker punched." He basically said he tapped him on the shoulder and immediately punched him. Matt Crafton's version of the story was that they had a discussion and it turned into a fight. Nonetheless, the 2 were caught on camera, sort of the aftermath, with Nick Sanchez having a lot of blood down his face and Matt sort of not there. Matt Crafton has since been fined $25,000. Nick Sanchez was fined $5,000, I believe, for some of the verbal use of verbal threats afterwards. And Nick's father, Renee Sanchez, has been suspended. So, Landon, break it down for us. What did you see here?
I didn't see the part that was news to me on his dad being suspended. So his dad must have been part of the scuffle or something. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Were you surprised that Crafton was not? What do you want to talk about first? The racing, or let's talk about the racing.
Let's start with the racing side, because fighting's fighting, and we're not UFC guys.
We can comment on the fighting. It's disappointing to me. I'm very disappointed in Crafton.
I am.
I think he got off pretty easy with just a fine there. But I would expect more out of a champion. We'll talk about that in a second. But the racing side of things, and this is part of why I'm disappointed in Crafton, I guess, is Nick did nothing wrong. If anything, I think Crafton completely opened himself up to this, to getting turned, and it was an error on his part, and him and 10 other trucks paid the price. You cannot, and I have all these things that I say that Parker, you and I talk about. What is another thing that I love to say about superspeedway racing? What is the most important line in superspeedway racing? The bottom always wins, but what is the best utility? The middle. The middle is where passes are made.
Yep.
You got to be on.
You say that.
Don't get me wrong. It's the shortest distance, but you have to protect the middle, and on top of that, you have to protect who's pushing you, not the other way around. Drafting is not just a one-dimensional thing. It's not only the car in front of you. You have to protect what's behind you almost more importantly than you do when to line up with the car that's in front of you. And when it's less than 5 laps to go at a place like Talladega and you're in the outside line, actually, it doesn't matter if you're in the inside line or the outside line. You have to protect the middle, because the middle is just where energy changes. It's where shifts happen. Cars go backwards through the middle and they go forwards through the middle. And you have to just watch that lane, because that's what can mix up the energy. And so for Matt, it was like, to me, looked like a mental lapse going into the trial over there, just following the trucks in front of him and opening up this huge lane in the middle to the truck behind him, who, Matt maybe doesn't know how good of a run Sanchez has, but he doesn't, in my mind, he doesn't have to. He can see how close he is in his mirror. Sometimes your move to the middle is actually not because you made a offensive move, but because you made a defensive move, right? And in my mind, Crafton almost should have defensively ended up creating a middle lane, because the lane in front of him moves up to go to the outside or to run a lane wider, and he looks in his mirror and the 2 truck isn't going up with him, so he just plugs the middle. And hopefully the 2 truck pushes him. But instead, he tried to follow those guys, thinking, that the 2 truck is going to follow him, and it just created this gaping hole, and you're far enough back into the field that Sanchez filled the gap. And then obviously Matt had a late block, had to change his mind pretty quickly there, and had a late block, and it caused the wreck. So, Sanchez didn't do anything wrong. To me, that was all Crafton. And it was a shame, because then you had Crafton's reaction to it, which there's not a lot of there's no great video. It's hard for us to come up with, the opinion. Obviously, NASCAR made their penalty, so it is that part is what it is. To me, it's just like using some common sense here. I don't know what Crafton was looking for or doing in his street clothes in the garage area 30 minutes after his wreck.
Yep.
Going anywhere near Nick Sanchez. That's kind of like a looking for trouble type thing. Don't you think?
That's what's disappointing to me. So I think you described the on-track part perfectly. I agree with you 100%. That's a lapse in concentration, or a just, not fully paying attention with under 10 laps to go to superspeedway, where you have to be on tilt and on absolute kill every 5 seconds, or you're gonna get moved or get something like that happening. Like if your latency on a decision is more than instant, good luck, you're done. Like I'd be honest, when I'm at the end of superspeedways like that one there, or any of them, there is no time in a race car that I'm at a higher sense of like everything. I'm trying to account for every single thing possible. My brain is being tasked at the highest level it possibly can, because it's just there's so much going on and so many things you have to consume. So that's if I'm riding 10th or I'm riding first. Like, that's just how it goes. Secondly, to your point, the waiting around, the premeditation. I hate saying premeditation.
It sounds like a murder.
Yeah, it sounds like a murder. but I think that term makes some sense to me, because it's like, to sit around there and be that angry. I've been angry for sure, but I'm not that angry 45 minutes later, especially not when I changed out my stuff and had time to think about it for a minute and remember that I'm a human being on the earth, and like this is racing, shit happens, sorry. I don't like that, and I'm really disappointed in Matt, because of your point, being a champ, being an elder statesman of the series, being someone that's been in the sport as long as he has.
45 years old, dude.
Yeah, like, come on. Like what are you doing? Yeah, it just makes no sense to me. I mean, I have no problem going up there to Nick and being like, hey, man, here's all the things you did wrong. Here's why, you're going to have a tough time if you don't cut that shit out. Here's what, in your opinion, whatever your view is, here's why I've been so successful as to who I've been here so long and what you're struggling with, and I'm going to make it really hard on you the next couple of weeks. No problem. Go say all you want. But to literally beat the shit out of someone, I don't know. I don't like that. It's not my thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Who did anybody get suspended earlier in the season when there was a fight? The Ross Chastain.
No.
Nobody got suspended there.
No.
See, here's my thought, and this is why NASCAR made the call, and so I don't and I didn't really talk to anybody about this. Obviously, a lot of times we talk to people or we get some more inside knowledge. I didn't really talk to anybody about this scenario, NASCAR's thinking, so maybe I should after the fact here. But I feel like if they fought on pit road, right? And granted, there was a wreck and you had to go to the infield care center. But let's say this was a post-race fight on pit road where both of the trucks finished parked right next to each other. Both drivers got out at the same time. Emotions are high in that moment. They're elevated. They just got out of their race cars, and they go in there and they start fighting. I don't know if that I would suspend drivers for that.
No, not at all.
Right? I would suspend crew members, because crew members should be breaking up fights, not adding to them. But I don't know if I would suspend drivers for fighting each other in that moment. Partly too because, hey, we market that stuff, right? They put it on TV, it's on commercials. I think I would fine drivers. We obviously shouldn't be violent with each other. We love passion, we love emotion. I would fine them for that. I don't want to promote violence, but I don't mind seeing them fight on pit road if I'm NASCAR. What Matt Crafton did, and I want to be kind of careful because I guess I don't really know what he did because we haven't actually seen the best footage, but he obviously got a pretty hefty fine for whatever NASCAR thinks he did. So what happened there with him changing his clothes, going to the infield care center, getting checked out by the doctors, right? Going to his hauler, changing his clothes, going to his motorhome, taking a shower, and then going back out to the garage to find Nick Sanchez. and fight him, to me, is a suspendable offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think he got off light.
I think he got off really light. I don't think Sanchez did anything that I could see to get suspended for. I think what he said was not good. And I think that the fine that he got reflects that, and I agree with that. But, there's a difference between words and actions. And it's just that, Crafton's actions there to me were a lot more serious than just a $25,000 fine. I am in full agreement. I don't really have, I don't really have much to add there other than this. That's how I saw immediately. I agree that we haven't seen great video, but I didn't need to know the situation, as you put it, in terms of timing, which is the disappointing part. And I think we need to sort of set that mark, as you put it, with the pit road deal, which is sort of like, that's still competition, right? Right.
You're on pit road for that first 30 minutes after the race, and you're in your race suit, or you're like, to me, that's the game.
The adrenaline is still there.
Yeah, the game is still going. That's the buzzer just went off, and the teams are sitting around looking at your reactions. Yeah, exactly. Like that's part of the show. That 30 minutes is still part of the show, and we're still on TV. We're still talking to those people. That's the show. Like, there you go.
Right.
45 minutes afterwards in the garage, not the show.
Street clothes,
no, not the show. Now it's become pedestrian. And
it's borderline assault.
Yeah, this is assault. Yeah, this is no longer racing. This is just straight up assault. So yeah, I think we're in agreement there. He got off light. We'll see if there's a change in any of the policies there. But yeah, just disappointing overall with Matt Crafton. So let's move on, should we?
Let's do it.
All right. In the Xfinity Series, just some news roundup from around out there. Sammy Smith has announced he's going to Junior Motorsports last week, so he'll be staying in the Xfinity Series. A fun one, Boris Said and Raja Karuth are joining Hendrick, the 17 car, for some Xfinity races. Boris Said's going to do the Roval. Raja Karuth is going to do Phoenix. Pretty exciting for Raja. I got to talk about that. I think he's pretty pumped to be in that level of equipment, and I think he'll do a great job.
For him.
What's that?
That'll be a really fast car.
Oh, yeah. I told him, I was like, hey, man, look, just enjoy this. And he was like, he had a really fun question. He was like, man, is he going to drive different, all this stuff? I said, nope. You're just going to get done with the lap, and guess what they're going to say? Instead of being like, that's P22, they're going to be like, that's P2. Good job.
Yep. It's going to feel the same. You're just going faster.
Yep, exactly. But you know what this does? And I want to talk about that because that's a good segue into a conversation before we jump into the Cup Series, which I do want to get into here. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to counteract myself. We're going to go into the Cup Series, and we're going to talk about this topic that I have in my mind off of the Cup Series a little bit. And that is the Cup Series obviously was at Talladega as well. Ryan Blaney won the race in a wonderful display of the correct moves to make at every juncture in the last 10 laps of a superspeedway race. Mm-hmm. From the bottom to the top to the bottom to winning the race, right? Mm-hmm. And I felt like the moves, I had an onboard, they have an onboard on Twitter I saw posted, so I reposted it and thought this was really cool because you could listen to the onboard and his spotter, and there was moments where I felt like you could hear the spotter raise their voice, right? Josh Williams, to signal the idea of like, this is important, listen to me, right? Yeah. And it was him clearing the 48 when the 48 gets stuck to the middle. He does that, but there's also moments there where you're listening to it and he's not doing what the spotter's asking, which is what's going to lead to my next point. And he then eventually pretty much listens, and they get to the end, and off turn 4, the spotter has an amazing point, which is like, don't let the 24 who's behind him get clear of the outside car so he can pop and make a move, basically hold him back, which was incredible. Mm-hmm. I thought that was amazing. But some of the moves, as you watch the car and listen to the spotter that Ryan makes, are because he is so ungodly confident in what he's doing is correct. And what I mean by that is he's making real-time assessments of listening to this person shout in his ear to do one thing, assessing the situation and deciding to do something different in milliseconds of time. And that can only be done when you are at the highest level of your confidence as a driver, when they're correct, especially. And a lot of his things were correct. Every move I saw him make was correct. It was correct. And I was like, yep, that's how you win a super speed race at a cup level. Pretty amazing when I watched that back, Landon.
Yeah, I think that's pretty impressive. I think also our cars, the visibility in our cars is better than it's ever been, or for a couple of reasons. Our spotters are the best that they've ever been, and they're only getting better at super speedway racing across the board. On the roof in the Cup Series, those guys know, how to communicate what's going on, how to call these races, and then the these rear view cameras in the Cup cars. I think you'll just show the drivers an even more controlled and clear picture of what's going on behind them. So, I think that can kind of go one of two ways. Maybe there's less, I don't want to say you still have the same amount of mistakes, but, the drivers, they just have so much more control. They've got better information and better decision-making abilities that make a super speedway race even more tactical and even more chess-like than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm. No, that's right. It's a good point. And I think the reason I bring up the confidence part is because I really think you can say about the cars being more, ability to see more, right? Which I think is the case with the camera. And I think the spotters have become so advanced. Let's do a spotter now compared to just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, in terms of the level of information that's being, spewed, and the terminology being used is so different if you think about it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that is just sort of us, the sport, progressing and understanding what's important for the driver to know versus what isn't, and how much the driver really can take in information-wise. Like, I think it's another thing that we've seen is that the spotters are now giving so much information because we've discovered that drivers can take that input, right? We can take that much input while going 200 miles an hour and making decisions and looking at the mirror all in real time. And that's a really, that's sort of a accolade for the human brain in a lot of ways, right? Don't worry, the AI isn't going to beat us there yet, I think. But the reason I bring up confidence is because this is something I've talked a lot about over the years, and that is that there's two main currencies for a race car driver. There's obviously money, right? We all know this takes money to go fast and to do this. The second is confidence. And confidence is such a funny thing because I've actually started to really do a lot of research on this. And that is, what really makes confidence, what builds self-confidence, what keeps it, what degrades it, right? And it's really fascinating because there's a ton of research out there about confidence. And there's some belief and research to say that, like, people are born more confident than others, right? Mm-hmm. While there are others that but it's also believe it's a developable skill, right? You can develop more confidence, of course. You see that everyone feels it, no matter what you're doing, whether you're gardening or driving race cars. You're going to have more confidence in the things you do or don't. When you start to learn and understand it and whatever, and be successful at it, that sort of thing. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, who's like the measure of confidence in motorsports? And I kept coming back to the same answer, and that was that whenever you ask anyone who knows global motorsports who's the greatest race car driver of all time, they're going to say Ayrton Senna. And what's amazing is they believe, I think often they'll give you reasons like, oh, he was super fast and all this stuff, but what they don't realize is what made him so great, right? And what made him so great, and what made him possibly the greatest race car driver of all time, is that he had an unbelievable confidence and belief system above any other race car driver before him and any other race car driver most likely after him. And that was, he truly believed that he was put on this earth by God, by a higher power, to go and win Formula One races. That is an unobtainable level of confidence for a lot of drivers. And so I thought this, it's just interesting to sort of think about that level, and then you look at something like Ryan Blaney's doing and realize that really, when it comes down to driving race cars, often the difference between being fast or making the right decisions or doing the right things comes down to the simple word of confidence and where your belief systems come from. And what he's doing, the other day, to me is the same as a Max Verstappen who's super confident right now, sitting on the pole position every week and dominating F1 races. Like, that's the level of confidence it takes to be a top level race car driver. Although I don't know if any of us will ever obtain Ayrton Senna status in the confidence level. Thoughts?
Confidence is everything. I feel like I've seen it in myself and other drivers. When you have confidence, it is that last 1% that you need. I always felt like a great confidence builder almost for Xfinity racing was when the Xfinity cars and the Cup cars were so similar. And you'd go from a Cup car and hop in an Xfinity car and it felt easy to drive. It just like elevated your confidence as a driver, right?
You felt slower, right?
Yeah, you felt slower and you're like, oh, this is easy. This is no problem. And maybe it's not even the car itself, but just the competition level going from that Cup garage to Xfinity, you would just be like, oh, it's a piece of cake. I can handle this. So many other examples. And maybe that's a lesson in life, I think, for anybody else. It's just finding what it is that can get your confidence up so that you can focus back on your vision and what it is that you were trying to accomplish. What is your end goal or your guiding light, whatever that is. Having that confidence to say, yeah, this is the direction I want to go and I'm going to take it. And that could be as big picture as making a career choice or, something big, or a small decision like you're Ryan Blaney deciding which lane to block on the last lap of Talladega.
You actually brought up a great point, which I was laughing about this with someone earlier today, and that is if you look at the last lap of that truck race, in first through third was Brett Moffitt, a full-time Xfinity Series driver, myself, full-time Xfinity Series driver, in third place Chandler Smith, full-time Xfinity Series driver.
Yeah.
We all dropped in there for a weekend, and there we find ourselves leading at the most important time. And it's like the exact situation we find ourselves in the Xfinity Series when, we go to Sonoma and I finished fifth and every driver in front of me was a Cup driver. And I was like, damn.
Yeah.
What do they know that I don't?
Yeah.
It could just be confidence. So that can be a big part of it. Hey, moving on from the confidence thing, talking more of the Cup Series. First and foremost, Kevin Harvick was DQ'd after battling for the win there. Sounds like Stewart-Haas Racing will not appeal it. They had the bolts apparently back out, according to Rodney Childers, of the windshield. Now, just total devil's advocate. There's a bit of speed to be had in the window areas of race cars at superspeedways, in the rear window often popping up a little more, or the way they used to set it with the the stuff that they seal it with, and they have that pop up and sort of create a wing that would knock the air from hitting the spoilers. I'm just saying. I'm not saying. Yep. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, they just were super surprised and had no idea how that happened, and they're going to investigate it to see, why that bolt backed out. And it's a shame. They didn't mean for that to happen, but they're also not going to appeal. And then, these things are always, they're always in the favor of performance. But man, weird. It was just an accident.
Totally. It's just crazy when stuff gets loose like that in the perfect optimal spot. It's like when the spoiler fell off the Michael Waltrip's car.
Oh, that was a long time ago. I remember
2011 Daytona.
I'm not trying to bring this up again, but we will eventually, or we can bring it up another day. But is the culture going to change? Do we want it to change? Should we be? I know we DQ'd him. I don't know how much more shaming we have to do, but should we, as a racing community industry, should we be calling them cheaters? Were they cheating? Is this a shame? Is this a black mark on the sport? I think about golf, right? Like, golf or other, personal athletic sports, I guess you could say. Cheating is such a serious thing. Anything that would require you to get disqualified from a competition is like serious. So I don't know. I'm just curious if there's a culture thing in this or whatever. They got DQ'd.
Change the term, basically.
Right.
I like that. I actually agree that we should change the term, because it's not it's not cheating. They're just working within the best they can within the box, and sometimes you get caught. But I don't know. It's like cheating does seem aggressive. That seems like an aggressive term for this because it's ingrained in the culture, and I don't know if the culture should change, right? Hey, big news out there, by the way. Apparently, or sources, we're hearing this will be announced. So unfortunately, it sounds like the Montreal expected deal for the NASCAR Cup Series to go to Montreal is not happening. But in replacement would be that the Cup Series is going to your homeland, Landon.
Yes.
Iowa.
I just got an email from NASCAR. So I don't, it might be announced by now. While we're doing this pod, obviously I guess we're releasing the pod. By the time this pod is released, it'll be announced. I think it'll probably be announced, yeah. I just got an email from NASCAR. I'll read it. Confidential announcement. Hopefully I don't get thrown out for this. Today, NASCAR will officially announce another exciting component to the 2024 NASCAR Cup and Xfinity Series schedules for the first time ever in the NASCAR Cup Series. First time since 2019, the Xfinity Series will visit the Iowa Speedway. Calling it one of the most fan-friendly tracks in the Midwest. It'll be a new venue for the Cup Series, like we said. I think it's exciting. I mean, it's cool for Iowa. Hopefully I get to race in it.
Yeah,
either one of Cup or Xfinity.
This needs to be big comeback.
Yeah,
in Iowa.
I love to race in this thing. I mean, obviously, I don't want to wait that long to race again.
No, I don't. I hope you don't have to wait that long next year.
But but I do want to race at the Iowa Speedway next year. That would be awesome. And
I surmise this will be in the midsummer or early summer, late summer. I'm guessing.
Sure. I guess I don't see dates here in this email. Maybe they announce it.
Hell, they should put it in the playoffs, September.
Yeah. So it's a cool track. It's a unique short track. I think it's a short track.
Definitely,
but it's fast and races like kind of a fast short track, like even faster than Richmond. But it's a great place. I actually made some of the first laps ever on that track, racing a late model. I tested there when it was brand new, and then I raced on it in one of the first races ever to be held there. So it's a cool racetrack. Not far from where I grew up, about an hour and a half. Actually, not far from the Newton Kart Club, where I grew up racing go-karts on dirt as a kid. So really cool to see Iowa Speedway get a race. I would have loved to see Montreal on the schedule. Hopefully Montreal can get an opportunity. Hopefully it's not at the expense of Iowa Speedway, because I like to see, more unique racetracks, more ovals. I think there's definitely, bringing Iowa Speedway onto the schedule. Maybe Montreal can fill a gap somewhere else. Quick question, though.
Yep.
I know I'm throwing a lot at you here. What race is this replacing?
Well, it would have replaced what's the thought process is replacing what would have been Montreal, which would have been Montreal would have replaced what am I missing here? I'm missing one.
Where are we not going?
Well, the schedule's not out yet, so we're not 100% sure, to be honest.
Okay.
I think it would replace, would it be Coda maybe? No.
No, we're not losing Coda, are we? I don't know. I guess it'll be interesting to see.
Fontana.
Oh,
Fontana.
That's right. Okay.
Fontana. That's what we're missing. Yeah. We can't go to we had to find a race somewhere.
Okay. So we're losing Fontana for now.
Yes.
I guess it's still a little unknown on what's going to happen to Fontana, because they had plans to turn it into a short track.
I think they're still going ahead with that, from what I hear.
So Fontana will go on a couple-year hiatus here, or a year hiatus, I suppose.
Okay. At least. I think one thing I want to say on this, put aside Iowa, the track, which is, I think the track is actually cool, and it's aged a ton, and my God, I bet the tire wear is going to be immense. This is going to be a lot of fun, because I bet the race will be from the bottom to the top, all the way to the wall. Yeah. And from what I've seen at IndyCar, it looks like it's getting pretty wore out. I actually held the track record there in trucks for a while. I don't know if it's been beat, actually. I might still. By the way, FYI. But I do think it's a cool place. It is unfortunate that I'm losing all these road courses in the Xfinity Series. It's like, wait a second. You guys just teased me with so many, and now you're ripping them back away. But, no, I like Iowa. I think it's a very cool track. I actually think, but at a broader level and a more global perspective, This is what I want to see out of the NASCAR Cup Series for the next decade. I want to see a schedule that literally takes till September to get done, the end of to October, because it's so damn different from the year before, right? Like I want such variability. You can't even you don't even know where you're going. Like it's the only thing you know is you're starting at the Daytona 500 and you're probably ending at one place, but everything in between, who knows? And I think that's badass. I love that.
Yeah. So let's not be stale. I think that's the mandate from NASCAR. I think they want more mobility, through their schedule. They want more options. Obviously they proved that they can do a street course. They've proved that we can pop in and out of some of these road courses. We've proved that these cars race on all race well on all different types of tracks. And, if you go back 10 years, longer than 10 years, the last TV deal, NASCAR signed long-term agreements with these racetracks. And I don't think that they're necessarily doing that anymore.
No.
And I also think that NASCAR in the near future here, I think they're taking a serious look at incentivizing the tracks and their business arrangements with these tracks on their actual turnout, and the people that they put in the seats. I think that's a priority for NASCAR. Where in the past, the incentive structure for the tracks was to, maybe put on a race, but they got paid an awful lot of money from the TV deal, and they weren't super incentivized to go promote a good turnout. And I've had plenty of conversations through my career and my time of people that believe that that's, a part of why you go to some of these venues and there's no butts in the seats. There was poor promotion on the track side of things. But then you go to some tracks and they do a great job promoting. So, I think NASCAR is very aware of that, and that's part of their future partnership with these tracks is to hold them accountable and make sure that they're promoting the sport in their local markets and they're, making sure that people get out to the races.
Yep. Well, moving on. We obviously continue in the playoffs for the NASCAR Cup Series. The Roval is a cutoff race for the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. You've got both 2311 drivers in the bottom four, Ross Chastain and Kyle Busch. Anything unexpected there for you?
I would have expected more out of Ross. I think he'd shown, there was some promise there recently. Obviously, Talladega was a bummer for him, but he's not out of it by any means. I think that we're kind of just focusing on, you just mentioned the bottom four there as if those guys are out of it, but it's a tight points battle all the way through. So this race weekend is truly going to be a wild card. There's no telling what's going to happen. Being a road course, obviously you have action on road courses and things like that, but you also have strategy and stage points, earning stage points at the expense of your finish position. Like that's always a consideration at road courses. And so it'll be interesting to see, who could score stage points and who can get good finishes. The same on the Xfinity side of things. Picking and choosing which stage, where to score stage points and how that affects the rest of your race will be a big deal.
100%. And I expect to be in that same position. Last thing in the NASCAR world, and as promised, we're going to move into Formula One. But that is that Spire bought Kyle Busch Motorsports here. Now we don't have to go too deep into this what this means and that sort of thing. But I thought was interesting was a quote from Jeff Dickerson when asked by Bob Pockrass essentially who's funding all these acquisitions. Remember, Spire also bought the Live Fast charter recently for
Infinity dollars.
Yeah, for Infinity dollars, $4 bajillion, $40 million. And now the estimated spend on KBM was around $20 million, which primarily is the building. Basically, was the value. The real estate was very highly valued, and then the Rowdy manufacturing, which does manufacturing for truck teams. I think were the two main bits, and then you have a little bit of the haulers and that sort of stuff. But as always, race teams without a charter are not worth very much. So remember that number is not for a race team. That number was for a building, basically, and a small manufacturing business. I thought was interesting was Jeff Dickerson's response to this was how many more acquisitions do we have to do to be taken seriously?
Yeah, I think that was an interesting non-answer because that wasn't what Bob asked.
Yep.
Bob asked, how are you paying for it?
Exactly.
Which, I mean, I wouldn't expect Jeff to answer that anyways. Doesn't have to answer that, but that's the question.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously Jeff said, how many more do we have to do for people to take us seriously? I think we take it really seriously. The question is just like, where's the money coming from? Maybe they've got the money. I don't know. I feel like you acquire those things by a couple different ways. You got a great bank, you got a great investor, or you've got the assets yourself to be able to stroke a 40, 50, $60 million check for all those assets. So, I mean, if they borrow the money to do it, then that's a hell of a blue sky value, I guess, for whether it's a bank or a partner. I think there's some pretty impressive blue sky valuations because the businesses themselves, I'm not sure the businesses actually can justify that kind of valuations. We talked about that a couple weeks ago on the pod. There's people are looking at Andretti and Gamebridge and their potential involvement. I think that's maybe what Bob was potentially trying to get at. Is there some kind of tie here to that? Mm-hmm. Obviously Jeff shot that down, so I don't know.
It's interesting, and I think you said it best. He's under no obligation to tell anyone where it all comes from, right? As I bet anyone, right?
Here's the thing, though. I told you privately over text, which Spire in the sport, they've been agency for so long. And Jeff Dickerson was my first agent when I was a driver. In fact, I was his second driver.
You and KB?
No, actually, Spencer Clark. The late Spencer Clark, God rest his soul, was a young driver from Vegas that Jeff represented. Myself, and then Josh Wise. We were kind of the first three drivers that Jeff represented. And then Kyle Busch was Jeff's business relationship with Kyle was never like a direct agent type deal. I'm not exactly sure there, but I never felt like Kyle and Jeff was actually Kyle's agent. He was a spotter for a while, but yeah, I've known Jeff my whole life. He's been like family to me. Obviously, I'm driven for him. And so when they got into the team ownership business, people, and this is kind of a reaction to Jeff's response about how many more deals we have to do for people to take us seriously. I think people shrugged Spire off for a while, right? They bought this charter, they partnered with Jay Robinson, they ran around the back for a couple of years. People didn't take them seriously. There was always, there's these industry rumblings of like, well, Todd Braun owns the charter, or there's some kind of relationship there. People just assume that it was like this, proxy team for Braun Racing and da-da-da-da or whatever. Just rumor stuff. But at the end of the day, the team hasn't changed names to anything. Still Spire Motorsports. It's still owned by Jeff and TJ. They obviously have their own people. Bill Anthony runs the place as the team president, and they make their own decisions. They have their own deals. They have their own drivers. They have their own sponsors. I've driven for the team. I've brought sponsorship to that team. The check went to Spire Motorsports. Wasn't anybody else. When I drove for Spire, I answered to Jeff and TJ and Bill. So I think to defend Jeff's comments, I would say, hey, after all they've been doing and wherever this money is coming from, it's still Spire Motorsports. So, and I think the one defense I will have to that.
Well, and I think it's a great point. I think some of the thought process amongst many people is, as you put it, since the beginning of this, it's been, this is a cash grab or a business venture, which it can be for sure. But at the same time,
it should be a business venture.
It should be a business venture. I'd say is the wrong word, but sort of like a opportunistic investment, that sort of thing. But what they're proving now is just continued want to, keep going, right, and building this. And so, I think that's a really cool thing for them. We'll see how far it goes. Speaking of which, you mentioned Gamebridge. We know they're pretty heavily involved with Andretti. And the big news in the Formula One world and the motorsports world as a whole was that Andretti's bid for an F1 team was approved by the FIA. Now, this does not mean they have an F1 team yet. This is a part of the approval process, essentially meaning the sanctioning body has said, yes, we will accept you. You pass and check all the boxes in a sporting side. You show you have the technical prowess to operate an F1 team, and you have the financial backing to do an F1 team. This now moves them to the FOM. FOM is basically the rights holders of the media side of the business, which is Liberty Media, and it's all the teams, and they have to approve adding another team, which, as we've talked about many times, the buy-in was set at $200 million for a new team to join. That was before the Drive to Survive explosion in popularity, where many teams want to be $600 million now. But essentially, they have to prove they have a manufacturer and that they're going to add to the sport. Well, they have the manufacturer in General Motors. Ever heard of them? They're one of the top 4 manufacturers in the world and the largest in the United States. And I think this is pretty funny because the teams have been against it, obviously, because it cuts into their piece of the pie. They want someone who brings, more to the pie, right? Which they debated if Andretti, that name, and GM really does that. But I think what's interesting is that Formula One as a whole looked at the coming years, and many years ago doing the 2026 regulation said, we want to have more OEMs. Well, here is one who wants to join, who is the largest in the U.S. and one of the top 5 in the world. Are they really, really sitting there saying, oh, this isn't a done deal? Basically the FOM and all the teams are like, oh, yeah, we're going to see if we approve them. Yeah, sure thing. It's like, this is General Motors. I do not think there's a possibility, although people keep saying this isn't a done deal, all this stuff, and I am privy maybe to some rumblings here and there. I just, from a purely incentive-based situation, you cannot tell me that the FOM does not see value in adding one of the top 5 manufacturers of cars in the world, not just from having a team, but from the marketing they're going to spend in promoting that team. Now, when I say GM, I am meaning Cadillac, by the way. But I just think this whole idea that, this approves their bid but not fully approves it, to me is just malarkey. This is basically it. I will be absolute, although there's some out there like this will be shocked if this happens, I'll be absolutely shocked if it doesn't happen. If we do not see an Andretti F1 team with GM on a grid in the next couple of years, I'll be absolutely shocked.
I think it'll happen. I think F1 FIA wants it to happen. I think it'd be good for the sport, be good for American interest in F1. I mean, this is the kind of thing that maybe will maintain the American interest after the high is worn off from Drive to Survive, which, by the way, it is worn off. So this is maybe a good way to capture some of those fans and keep them around. So I love it. I'm supportive of it. I'm excited to see what comes out of it too from Chevy's investment, or GM's investment, I guess I should say. What kind of cars do they produce? What kind of technology do they produce from it? The thing that I just don't understand about F1 is why do any of the existing F1 team owners care? Why would they approve? What is their motivation to approve Andretti? Why would they let in another team that has to cut into their slice of the pie? I don't get that. I don't agree. The economics to me don't even add up. So they get a $20 million check. Great. That'll pay half of their travel budget for a year.
I think that's where the $600 million makes more sense. I do think, I agree with you, but I think it would just be shocking to me for them all to want these manufacturers in there and then to tell one of the biggest manufacturers in the world no. And I think that's bad business. And I think it's bad for the sport. And I think if you truly stop GM from coming in there, you have made you've done something that you should never have done. And I just think that's a bad move.
That's a good point.
So I do believe that could be the incentive structure for the teams to allow them. Just on that point, it wasn't said today that the Alpine F1 team made a profit in 2022 of 26.2 million euros. I don't even care about the number. Race team and the word profit, most shocking news in the history of the sport in all 2023. Just put it out there.
Didn't we talk about profit in race teams? a couple weeks ago, or was it a private conversation? Was it on the pod or was it off the pod?
What do we? I can't remember.
You can't. My point about profit in race teams is you can win races, you can make a profit. You can't do both for an extended period of time.
Alpine's a good example.
And Alpine is a good example. They made a profit. Good job. Where do they run? 15?
Well, no, it was from finishing 4th in the Constructor Championship last year. So we get a little leeway. Yeah.
Which is basically like 10th. All right,
moving on. Hey, breaking news before we get off the pod. We did this one really long for missing a week. We basically condensed it all into one big ass huge episode. Josh just dropped this into our show notes here. Formula E just put out this, I guess, this PR press release. I don't know what this is. Anyway, they're basically announcing that they are now the 4th largest viewer base in motorsports. I'm struggling with some of the math here. Formula E's international fan base increased 17% year on year to 344 million, taking it past NASCAR to become the 4th largest motorsport. Germany and the USA were the fastest growing markets by fan base, up 45% and 30%. Well, we know that we caused a lot of that, so we're sorry, NASCAR. Formula E interview with the CEO, Jeff Dodds, that obviously put this over the edge. More than 225 million viewers watched Formula E races live during Season 9, up 4% on the previous season. China and the USA, plus new race markets in Brazil, India, and South Africa all saw significant increases in live views. We're going to have to break this down going forward, but we've just put it out there. So we'll investigate this. Hold on. Who are the 3 ahead of them? There's F1. Would MotoGP, I guess, be in that top 3? Probably consider. And then what? WEC. There's no way the WEC is bigger than NASCAR in fan base. I'm sorry, but I don't know. I got to get a list here.
I don't know. I wonder. Yeah, that's great stuff. Jeff, call us. We'd love to know those numbers. And that's going on. It's like just a massive number on a global scale like that. What does it mean? I mean, if you're not actually capturing, I don't know what's. Are those real? Do you count those as real fans? Or how are you monetizing those viewers? Like, what are those viewers? What platforms are those viewers watching the races on? I don't know. I'm kind of interested.
There's no list. I'm looking at this article. There's no list of the 3 ahead of them. So I'm struggling here. I don't know about this.
Jeff,
so
come on, man. Do better.
What are we doing?
Give us more.
Yeah, we need more information.
Information, bud. I can't just wake up on a Tuesday in October and be like, it's off season. We need some publicity. Let's just claim ourselves as the 4th largest viewer fan base in sport,
which surpasses NASCAR, which I'm pretty sure there's no way it's 4th. So I'm really confused. Someone help me here. I'm going to the Roval this coming week. I'm 1 point down, Landon. My strategy, pretty simple. Beat all the other competitors.
You can do it, man.
We got.
It just gets crazy at the end there.
I know.
Get your stage points. Get your stage points, and
you're gonna get stage points in all 3 stages, and let the others do what they do, and we'll walk off to Vegas, go win that, and I will see you all in the championship 4. That's my plan. Got to go put it together. But
if you
very excited to be a
5,
by the way.
If you run top 5 in both stages, could you finish 10th and still be good?
Oh yeah, I mean we're I think 19 or 18 points behind Sammy Smith in 6th. We're 9 points behind Sheldon Creed, and we're 1 point behind Daniel Hemrick. And we have like a 26-point buffer to whoever's behind us.
Yeah.
So we're basically good. Yeah.
So, all right. You can do it, man.
Call it a lock. All right. That's it for the pod. We're back. We'll be back next week as well. I shouldn't guarantee that at all after this week's. That's it. See you later. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Hey, before you go, please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, click the bell icon below to be alerted to our latest videos. We also request that you let us know every single thing that we did wrong in this video or prior ones in the comment section below. We might just go through and answer them, or you'll make it to the next episode of the podcast or our next video. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to be able to listen to this podcast on the go. And subscribe to our newsletter at themoneylap.com, to get the best 5 minutes in motorsports delivered directly to your email inbox every Tuesday and Thursday. Thanks for watching.